3 months ago, I stood in my corner office on the 47th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, watching the city sprawl beneath me like a kingdom I'd conquered. At 32, I was the youngest VP at Morrison & Associates, pulling in 7 figures, driving a Tesla Model S, and living in a penthouse that cost more per month than most people's annual salary. My family saw me as the golden boy, the one who'd made it out of our working-class neighborhood in Queens and into the American dream. But here's the thing about dreams: sometimes they're just elaborate lies we tell ourselves. By Thanksgiving, I had lost everything. The company collapsed in a federal investigation. My savings evaporated with bad investments. The penthouse was gone, the car repossessed, and I was sleeping on my college roommate's couch in Astoria, wondering how I'd gone from boardroom presentations to standing in unemployment lines. That's when I decided to test something that had been eating at me for years. Growing up, my family had always treated success like a currency: the more you had, the more you mattered. My younger sister Emma was constantly compared to me, made to feel lesser because she chose to be a teacher instead of chasing Wall Street gold. My parents had built a shrine to my achievements while barely acknowledging hers. So I crafted a lie. I told them I'd lost everything, not because of a company collapse, but because of my own failures. I said I was broke, desperate, and needed help. I wanted to see who would stand by me when the golden boy facade crumbled. What happened next revealed a family secret so devastating that it would shatter everything I thought I knew about the people who raised me. This is the story of how losing everything helped me find the only thing that truly mattered, and how one lie exposed a much bigger one that had been destroying our family for decades. My family operates like a small corporation where love is earned through achievement and respect is measured in dollar signs. My father, Vincent Castellano, immigrated from Sicily when he was 12, carrying nothing but his father's work ethic and an unshakable belief that in America, you either make it big or you're nothing. He built a successful plumbing business from scratch, working 18-hour days until his hands were permanently stained with pipe compound and his back curved from decades of crawling through basements. My mother, Patricia, grew up in an Irish Catholic household in Woodside where appearances mattered more than happiness. She learned early that what the neighbors thought could make or break a family's reputation. Together, they created a home where success wasn't celebrated, it was expected, demanded, and weaponized against anyone who fell short. Emma, my sister, is 2 years younger but might as well be from a different planet. Where I was aggressive and ambitious, she was thoughtful and kind. Where I chased money, she chased meaning. After graduating summa cum laude from Columbia with a degree in education, she chose to teach 3rd grade in the same Queens public school we attended. My parents treated this like a personal betrayal. I remember Emma's college graduation dinner at Romano's, our family's go-to restaurant for celebrations. She just received an offer to teach at a prestigious private school in Manhattan, decent money, great benefits, a real opportunity. But my father spent the entire meal talking about my recent promotion to senior analyst, how proud he was that at least one of his kids understood what America offered. Emma could have been a lawyer, he said to our waiter, as if she wasn't sitting right there. Smart as a whip, this one. But she wants to babysit other people's kids for 30 grand a year. Emma's face flushed red, and she excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, her eyes were swollen. The pattern repeated constantly. Every family gathering became a performance where I was the star and Emma was the cautionary tale. During my 30th birthday party at my parents' house in Bayside, my father stood up to give a toast in front of 30 relatives and family friends. My son Vincent Jr., he announced, using my full name like he was introducing royalty, just bought his first apartment in Manhattan. Not renting, buying. At 30 years old, he owns more than I did at 50. The room erupted in applause while Emma, who'd just been denied a loan for a modest one-bedroom in Astoria, stared at her plate. But here's what nobody knew, what I discovered by accident 3 years ago when I was helping Emma move apartments. She'd been secretly supporting our cousin Maria's family after Maria's husband died in a construction accident. For 2 years, Emma had been sending half her teaching salary to help with rent and groceries, keeping 3 kids housed and fed. She never told anyone, never asked for recognition, never made it about herself. Meanwhile, I was getting family-wide praise for my generosity when I'd write a check for $100 at Christmas. The grand gesture I'd been planning was supposed to fix everything. I'd saved up $50,000 to pay off my parents' remaining mortgage, a surprise announcement at Thanksgiving that would cement my position as the family hero forever. I'd even had the bank draft made out, imagining my father's tears of pride, my mother's overwhelming gratitude, the story they'd tell at every family gathering for the next 20 years. But there was a secret buried in our family's foundation, something I'd stumbled upon completely by accident a month before my company collapsed. I was at my parents' house fixing their ancient desktop computer when I found a file folder tucked behind the monitor. Inside were documents that revealed a truth so ugly it made all our family dynamics suddenly, sickeningly clear. And that secret was about to become my nuclear option. Emma was the only family member I hadn't told about my supposed downfall yet. I was saving her for last, curious to see if the sister who'd been treated like a failure would extend compassion to a brother who'd supposedly joined her in that category. What I didn't expect was that her response would force me to confront not just who my family really was, but who I'd become in pursuit of their approval. Comment below and let me know where you're watching this from. I want to know how family dynamics play out in your part of the world. Thanksgiving 2024 was supposed to be my coronation. My parents had invited the usual suspects to their Bayside split level, Uncle Tony and Aunt Rose from Whitestone, my cousins Michael and Lisa with their kids, my grandmother Nana, who still spoke more Italian than English after 60 years in America, and Mrs. Chen from next door, who'd basically been adopted into our family after bringing us homemade dumplings for 15 years straight. The house was decorated with my mother's obsessive attention to detail, orange and burgundy tablecloths, pilgrim centerpieces she'd bought at HomeGoods, and the good china that only came out twice a year. The kitchen smelled like turkey, stuffing, and the lingering anxiety that always accompanied family gatherings where performance mattered more than presence. I'd driven in from Astoria in my roommate's beat-up Honda Civic, having sold my Tesla 3 weeks earlier as part of my elaborate deception. The plan was simple: announce my financial ruin during dessert, gauge everyone's reactions, then reveal the mortgage payoff as my way of proving that family support should flow both ways, regardless of circumstances. What I hadn't counted on was Emma arriving early. She found me in the basement, standing next to the old pool table where we used to play 8-ball as kids, trying to psyche myself up for the performance upstairs. She looked tired, more tired than a 28-year-old teacher should look in November. "Vinny, we need to talk," she said, using the childhood nickname that always made me feel simultaneously annoyed and loved. Before I could launch into my rehearsed sob story, she continued, "I know about the company. I know about Morrison and Associates." My blood went cold. "What do you know?" "I know they didn't collapse. I know you didn't lose everything. I know you've been lying to Mom and Dad for 3 weeks. She pulled out her phone, showing me a LinkedIn screenshot. "Maria's husband Tony works in your building's security. He mentioned seeing you there last Tuesday, looking pretty good for someone who's supposedly broke and homeless." I felt the elaborate house of cards I'd built starting to wobble. "Emma, I can explain, can you? Because I spent last night wondering why my brother, who I've looked up to my entire life despite everything, would lie about something like this. And then I realized you're testing us, aren't you? You want to see who cares about you when you're not the golden boy." The accuracy of her assessment hit me like a physical blow. "It's not that simple. Actually, it is exactly that simple. And here's what's really messed up, Vinny. I was going to help you. Even though you've watched Mom and Dad tear me down for years, even though you've never once stood up for me, I was going to offer you my couch and half my savings. Because that's what family does." Upstairs, I could hear my father's booming laugh and the sound of football commentary from the living room TV. The normal sounds of a family gathering that was about to become anything but normal. "There's something else," Emma said, her voice dropping lower. "Something I found out about Mom and Dad that changes everything. And I think you already know what it is." She was talking about the secret. The one I'd discovered accidentally, the one that had been eating at me for months. The one that explained why Emma had always been treated differently, why the family dynamics never quite made sense, why certain conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The documents in Dad's desk, I said quietly. You found them too. It wasn't a question. 3 months ago. I wasn't snooping, I was just, it doesn't matter how we found out. What matters is what we do with it. Upstairs, my mother's voice rang out, Vinny. Come up here, your Uncle Tony wants to hear about your new promotion. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Tony, who'd been laid off from his construction job 6 months ago and was too proud to admit he was struggling. Uncle Tony, who would probably understand my fake financial crisis better than anyone. Uncle Tony, who was about to witness a family implosion that would make his employment troubles seem manageable by comparison. Are you going to tell them? Emma asked. About the lies, both sets of lies. I looked at my sister, really looked at her for maybe the first time in years. She was still the same person who'd helped me with math homework, who'd cheered at my high school graduation, who'd never missed sending a birthday card even when our parents forgot hers. But now I could see the weight she'd been carrying, the knowledge that had been eating at her just like it had been eating at me. I don't know, I admitted. Well, you better figure it out fast, because I'm not keeping secrets anymore. Not theirs and not yours. The sound of footsteps on the basement stairs interrupted us. My father's voice boomed down. What are you two plotting down there? Food's getting cold. Emma and I looked at each other, and I realized that in the next hour, everything our family thought they knew about themselves was about to change forever. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button if you want to see how this family dinner became the most explosive Thanksgiving in Queens history. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers and your support means everything. We climbed the stairs into a Norman Rockwell painting gone wrong. The dining room table groaned under my mother's feast, a 20-pound turkey that had been brining for 2 days, her famous sausage stuffing, sweet potato casserole topped with marshmallows, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce both homemade and the canned stuff Uncle Tony insisted on, and 3 different kinds of pie. 17 people crammed around a table meant for 12, with folding chairs borrowed from the church and TV trays for the kids. My father stood at the head of the table like a patriarch from another era, carving knife in hand, ready to deliver his annual gratitude speech. Before we eat, he announced, I want to say how proud I am of this family. Especially my son Vincent, who just closed the biggest deal of his career. The lie hung in the air like smoke. I felt Emma's eyes boring into me from across the table, her expression unreadable. My cousin Michael raised his beer bottle in a toast, and suddenly everyone was looking at me expectantly. Actually, Dad, I said, my voice cutting through the warm family chatter like a knife through butter, that's not true. The room went quiet except for the football game still playing in the living room and my 8-year-old cousin asking her mom why everyone stopped talking. What do you mean, son? My father's smile faltered, but he kept the carving knife raised like he could slice away whatever uncomfortable truth was coming. I've been lying to you for 3 weeks. The company didn't collapse. I didn't lose my apartment. I'm not broke. I pulled out the mortgage payoff check I'd been carrying in my jacket pocket. In fact, I was going to surprise you with this, your mortgage paid in full. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Uncle Tony set down his beer with a sharp clink. Nana muttered something in Italian that I was pretty sure wasn't appropriate for Thanksgiving dinner. I wanted to see what would happen if I wasn't the golden boy anymore, I continued, my voice gaining strength. I wanted to know who in this family would still love me if I couldn't be your prize trophy. Vincent, what the hell? My father started. The answer, by the way, was Emma. Only Emma. I looked at my sister, who was staring at her plate. Emma, who you've spent her entire life making feel worthless because she chose teaching over money. Emma, who's been secretly supporting Maria's family for 2 years while you praised me for writing $100 Christmas checks. The silence was deafening now. Even the kids had stopped fidgeting. But here's the really interesting part, I said, standing up from my chair. While I was digging around testing everyone's loyalty, I found something else. Something that explains a lot about why this family works the way it does. Emma's head snapped up, her eyes wide with warning. But I was past the point of stopping. I found adoption papers, Dad. Hidden in your desk, behind your tax documents. Adoption papers for Emma, dated when she was 3 years old. The sound my mother made wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a cry. It was the sound of 25 years of carefully constructed lies crashing down at once. Turns out Emma isn't actually your biological daughter. She's the daughter of Mom's sister Maria? Yes, the same Maria whose family Emma's been supporting. The sister who died in that car accident when Emma was 3, the one you never talk about. My father's face had gone from red to white to a shade of gray I'd never seen on a living person. Vincent, stop. No, I'm not stopping. Because Emma deserves to know why she's been treated like an outsider her entire life. She deserves to know why you've been holding her to different standards, why nothing she did was ever good enough, why you could never quite love her the same way. Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at our parents, her adoptive parents, with an expression of devastating understanding. She's been your daughter for 25 years, I said, my voice cracking. She's been more loyal to this family than I ever was, more generous, more kind. And you've spent her entire life punishing her for not being your blood. Uncle Tony cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Chen was staring at her hands. The kids were wide-eyed and confused, sensing drama they couldn't understand. My mother finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. We were going to tell her when she was older. When? I demanded. When she turned 30? 40? When you were dead and she found out from a lawyer reading your will. Emma stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need some air, she said quietly. She walked toward the back door, and for a moment, I thought about following her. But I wasn't done. The really sick part, I said to the stunned room, is that she's been a better daughter to you than I ever was, and she's not even your biological child. She's been a better sister to me than I deserved. And I've been so busy chasing your approval that I missed it completely. I dropped the mortgage check on the table next to the untouched turkey. Consider it payment for 25 years of lies. And then I walked out, leaving my family to face the truth that had been rotting at the foundation of our house for a quarter century. I found Emma sitting on the back steps, staring at the small patch of grass where we used to play catch when we were kids. The November air was sharp enough to cut, but she didn't seem to notice the cold. She'd stopped crying, but her face had that hollow look people get when they're processing trauma in real time. I've known for 3 years, she said without looking up as I sat down beside her. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? I found my birth certificate when I was applying for my passport. Saw Maria's name listed as my birth mother. Did some digging, put the pieces together. She finally looked at me, and her eyes held a sadness that went deeper than anything I'd caused tonight. I've been waiting 3 years for them to tell me the truth. Behind us, through the kitchen window, I could hear muffled voices, urgent, angry, defensive. Uncle Tony was trying to calm everyone down while Nana apparently decided this was the perfect time to express her opinions about family secrets in rapid-fire Italian. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I kept hoping they'd find the courage to be honest with me. Because I understood why they might have thought keeping it secret was protecting me. Because... She shrugged, a gesture that seemed to carry 25 years of disappointment. Because I wanted to believe that my family loved me enough to trust me with the truth. A crash came from inside. Someone had dropped something, probably my mother having one of her episodes where she cleans aggressively when she's upset. Mrs. Chen appeared at the back door, made eye contact with us, and quietly retreated back inside. Smart woman. There's more, Emma said quietly. Maria didn't just die in a car accident. She was driving drunk, with me in the car. Mom and Dad weren't just grieving parents who took in their orphan niece, they were cleaning up a mess. The accident was Maria's 3rd DUI. There were questions about whether I should go into the system or stay with family. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. That's why they never talked about her. That's why they could never quite forgive me for existing. Every time they looked at me, they saw their obligation to clean up Maria's failures. I wasn't their chosen daughter, I was their burden. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, please come back inside. We need to talk about this as a family. I showed Emma the message. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Funny how we're a family now that the truth is out. We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the continued chaos inside. Through the window, I could see my father pacing the kitchen while my mother sat at the table with her head in her hands. Uncle Tony was loading leftovers into containers. His crisis response was apparently to make sure everyone had food to take home. "I'm sorry," I said finally. "Not just for tonight but for everything. For never standing up for you. For playing into their games. For being so caught up in being the golden boy that I never noticed what it was costing you. I know you are." She pulled her jacket tighter around herself. "But sorry doesn't change 25 years, Vinny. Sorry doesn't give me back all the times I wondered why I wasn't good enough, why nothing I did mattered, why I felt like I was always on the outside looking in at my own family. What are you going to do?" Emma was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. When she spoke, her voice was steady and clear. "I'm going to stop trying to earn love from people who were never capable of giving it freely. I'm going to focus on the family I've chosen, my students, my friends, Maria's kids who call me Aunt Emma and actually mean it." "What about us?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. She turned to look at me directly. "That depends on who you decide to be now that you know the truth. Are you going to keep being the person who needs to be the favorite? Or are you going to figure out how to just be my brother?" Before I could answer, the back door opened and my father stepped out. He'd aged 10 years in the past hour, his shoulders sagging like the weight of his secrets had finally become visible. "Emma," he said, his voice rough. "Sweetheart, can we talk?" "Don't call me sweetheart," she said without looking at him. "You lost that right about 3 years ago when you decided I wasn't worth the truth. We were trying to protect you. From what? From knowing that my birth mother loved me enough to make sure I'd be safe even if something happened to her? From understanding why I've always felt different? From having the chance to grieve the mother I lost." Emma stood up, brushing off her jeans. "You weren't protecting me, Dad. You were protecting yourselves from having to deal with complicated emotions." My father looked like she'd slapped him. "Emma, please, I need some time." She pulled her car keys from her pocket. "I need to figure out what this family means to me now that I know what it's actually built on." She walked toward her car, then stopped and turned back to me. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you tested everyone. At least now we all know where we really stand." Her Honda Civic pulled out of the driveway, leaving my father and me standing in the backyard of the house where we'd all pretended to be a normal family for 25 years. "I should have told her," he said quietly. "Yeah, you should have. I should have told her a lot of things." We stood there for a moment, two men who'd spent their whole relationship competing for the same woman's approval, finally understanding that we'd been playing a rigged game. "The mortgage check," my father said eventually. "That was real." "Yeah, it was real." "Why?" I thought about the question, really thought about it. "Because I wanted you to be proud of me. Because I thought grand gestures could fix what was broken between all of us. Because I'm an idiot who confused money with love." My father nodded slowly. "Come inside, son. Your mother wants to talk to you both, but..." He looked at the empty driveway where Emma's car had been. "I guess that conversation's going to have to wait." As we walked back toward the house, past the window where the rest of our family was still trying to process what had just exploded, I realized that everything I'd thought I wanted, my parents' pride, their approval, my status as the golden boy, felt hollow and meaningless now. All I wanted was my sister back. And I had no idea if that was even possible. The unexpected twist came 3 days later, when Emma showed up at my real apartment with a bottle of wine and a manila folder full of documents. "I've been doing some research," she said. "About Maria, about the accident, about why our parents really took me in. And Vinny? Everything we thought we knew about that night was wrong." 6 months later, Emma and I are sitting in the same spot on those back steps, but everything has changed. The manila folder she brought that night contained insurance documents, police reports, and a letter Maria had written to my parents before her death, a letter that revealed she'd been battling severe postpartum depression and had begged them to take me if anything happened to her. She wasn't a drunk or a failure. She was a young mother who knew she was struggling and loved me enough to plan for my future. My parents had created a false narrative to justify their emotional distance, turning their guilt about Maria's mental health struggles into resentment toward an innocent child. The truth was messier than their story, but also more forgiving. The conversation that followed was the hardest our family had ever had, but also the most honest. My father cried for the first time in my memory when he apologized to Emma, not just for the lies, but for 25 years of making her feel less than. My mother started therapy and began the slow work of rebuilding trust with the daughter she'd been too afraid to fully love. As for me, I learned that real family isn't about blood or achievement or who can pay off whose mortgage. It's about showing up, telling the truth, and choosing each other even when it's hard. Emma and I talk every day now. I attend her school's fundraisers instead of networking events. I've discovered that being someone's brother is infinitely more satisfying than being anyone's golden boy. The mortgage money went into a college fund for Maria's kids, Emma's half-siblings, who she's building relationships with now that the family secrets are finally in the open. My parents are learning to love without conditions, and I'm learning to exist without constantly performing for approval. Sometimes the family you end up with isn't the one you started with. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is tell the truth, even when it burns everything down. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share your own family truth moments in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories remind me that we're all just figuring this out together. Thanks for letting me share mine with you.